The apartment was quiet in the way places become when conversations stop living inside them. Morning light slipped through half-drawn curtains, touching the edge of a dining table where 2 mugs sat untouched. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, as if reminding the room that time still moved forward even when people didn't. Oriv stood near the window, scrolling through his phone, pausing on a message thread that hadn't changed since last night. The last text remained marked as delivered, not read. Myra used to wake before him. She once filled the space with motion, with humming and the sound of water boiling, with small questions about the day ahead. Lately, mornings had shifted. She woke earlier or later, slipped out quietly, and left behind silence instead of warmth. Oriv noticed these things the way people notice cracks in a wall they pass every day, slowly, reluctantly, hoping they wouldn't spread. At work, Myra laughed more. Not loudly, not in a way that drew attention, but enough that something unfamiliar settled into her expressions. Her phone was always face down now. Notifications were muted. When Oriv asked how her day had been, her answers were neat and efficient, trimmed of detail. She spoke as if summarizing a report instead of sharing a life. The change hadn't arrived suddenly. It arrived in fragments. Missed dinners explained by meetings. Delayed replies blamed on weak signals. A new interest in clothes, in leaving early, in staying late. Oriv told himself these were normal shifts, the kind that happened when people grew, when routines evolved. Still, doubt lingered quietly, never loud enough to accuse, only persistent enough to ache. One evening, Myra sat on the edge of the bed, tying her shoes with care. Oriv watched from the doorway. He asked where she was going. She paused for half a second too long before answering. Out with colleagues, she said, eyes fixed on the floor. The pause stayed with him long after the door closed behind her. That night, he sent a message he erased 3 times before finally pressing send. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't a plea. It was a simple question, wrapped in concern and familiarity. The kind of message people send when they are afraid of the answer. The phone stayed silent. Outside, traffic moved, lights changed, and the city carried on. Inside, Oriv sat alone, staring at a screen that refused to acknowledge his presence. He didn't know then that this quiet was not temporary. It was the beginning of something that could not be undone, only endured. The truth rarely arrives as a dramatic revelation. More often, it settles in quietly, disguised as coincidence. Oriv discovered it on an ordinary afternoon while folding laundry. Myra's phone buzzed on the table, lighting up the room for just a second. He hadn't meant to look, but names have a way of drawing attention when they appear too often. The message preview was brief, familiar in tone, intimate in rhythm. It was not explicit, but it was not innocent either. He placed the phone back where it was, hand steady, expression unchanged. When Myra came home later, she spoke about her day the way she always did now, carefully, selectively. Oriv listened without interrupting. The space between her words felt heavier than the words themselves. Over the following days, pieces aligned. Late nights. Sudden smiles at private jokes he was no longer part of. A presence in her life that existed only in pauses and half-truths. Oriv never asked for a name. Knowing there was someone else was enough. Naming it would make it permanent. Myra sensed the shift in him. She noticed his quiet, the way he no longer reached for his phone when it buzzed, the way his questions disappeared. Guilt settled into her movements, subtle but visible. She avoided his eyes more often now. When she did meet them, there was something apologetic there, something unfinished. The confrontation never came. Instead, there was a shared understanding that grew between them, unspoken and unresolved. They moved around each other like strangers memorizing boundaries. The apartment felt smaller, as if walls had moved inward to witness what neither of them would say out loud. One evening, the power went out. The room filled with darkness, broken only by city lights through the window. They sat across from each other in silence. Myra spoke first, her voice low and uncertain. She said things had changed. She said she didn't know when, only that they had. Oriv nodded. He asked if she was happy. She didn't answer immediately. That hesitation was louder than any confession. When the lights returned, nothing else did. Myra gathered her things over the next few days. Not all at once. Just enough each time to make the leaving feel gradual, almost polite. On the last night, she paused at the door, as if expecting something to stop her. Oriv said nothing. After she left, he sat alone again, opening the message thread on his phone. He typed carefully, choosing words that carried years of shared history. He pressed send and waited, unaware that some silences are not delays. They are decisions. Days passed with a strange sense of suspension, as if time itself was uncertain how to proceed. Oriv continued his routine, waking, working, returning to a space that no longer belonged to two people. Myra's absence was visible in the smallest details. An empty hook by the door. A shelf missing half its books. Silence where laughter once existed. The message remained unread. He checked it without urgency, without hope. Not because he expected a response, but because it was the last remaining thread connecting him to what they had been. Each time the screen lit up, the same status stared back at him, unchanged and indifferent. Myra, meanwhile, moved forward in ways Oriv could only imagine. New places, new conversations, a life that no longer required explanation. The decision to not open that message was intentional. Reading it would mean acknowledging what she had chosen to leave behind. Ignoring it allowed her to continue without interruption. One evening, rain traced slow patterns down the window. Oriv sat on the floor, phone resting beside him, untouched. He replayed memories not as scenes, but as sensations. The comfort of familiarity. The safety of being known. He realized that infidelity had not begun with another person. It had begun when attention shifted, when effort faded, when honesty became optional. He typed another message but didn't send it. Some words are meant to remain unsaid, not because they lack meaning, but because they arrived too late. He deleted it and set the phone aside. Across the city, Myra paused while scrolling through her notifications. Oriv's name appeared briefly before she locked the screen. She told herself she would read it later, when things were quieter, when she felt stronger. Later became tomorrow. Tomorrow became never. The unread message became a symbol neither of them spoke about. For Oriv, it represented closure denied. For Myra, it represented accountability avoided. Both carried its weight differently, but equally. Weeks turned into months. The apartment was eventually rearranged. New habits formed. Oriv learned how to exist without waiting. The phone stopped being an object of focus and became just another tool, stripped of expectation. One night, long after the message had lost relevance, Myra finally opened the thread. The words were gentle. They held no blame, no demand. Only an acknowledgement of love that once existed and acceptance that it no longer did. She stared at the screen for a long time. She didn't reply. Some messages are not meant to be answered. They exist only to mark the end of something that deserved better than silence. Life did not end with the unread message. It simply changed shape. Oriv moved into a smaller place, one with less history and fewer echoes. He kept himself busy, not to forget, but to continue. Healing did not arrive as relief. It arrived as acceptance, slow and unremarkable. He learned that betrayal doesn't always come from cruelty. Sometimes it comes from avoidance, from choosing ease over honesty. Myra had not intended to hurt him. That knowledge didn't soften the impact, but it clarified it. Understanding replaced anger, and anger, once gone, made room for growth. Myra, too, faced consequences. The excitement that once distracted her faded, replaced by a quiet discomfort she couldn't name. She realized that leaving without closure doesn't erase responsibility. It only delays it. The unread message lingered in her mind longer than she expected, a reminder that silence can wound just as deeply as words. They never spoke again. Not because they couldn't, but because some connections serve their purpose and then release you. The love they shared remained real, even if it did not survive. Infidelity had not erased their past, only rewritten their ending. Years later, Oriv deleted the message thread. Not out of bitterness, but out of respect for the life he was building. He no longer needed proof of what had happened. He carried the lesson instead. Love requires presence. Trust requires courage. And endings, when handled without honesty, leave marks that time alone cannot heal. The story of the unread message was never about technology. It was about choice. About the moment someone decides not to listen, not to explain, not to face the weight of their actions. It was about the quiet damage that follows. In the end, there were no villains, only people who failed each other in small, irreversible ways. And sometimes, that is the most painful truth of all.